A common topic in world history textbooks and popular culture concerns the life of the English king, Henry VIII. In past videos, I've discussed what was going on in Africa during famous periods in world history, and so today, I thought I would discuss what was going on in Africa during the dramatic events of Henry VIII's reign. What up, African World? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you'd like access to full courses and sources, or you simply want to show your support, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. Henry VIII was King of England from 1509 to 1547, so we'll be speaking about various events on the continent of Africa around that time. Henry VIII is most known for his controversial marriages to 6 different women and initiating the English Reformation, which was the separation of the Church of England from Rome's authority, a pretty big deal. Henry VIII is by far one of the most popular kings in all of English history, and since we hear so much about him, I thought it would be nice to know what was going on in Africa during his reign, putting things in perspective for us in the African diaspora. Before I begin, it's important to remember that many things were going on in Africa during this time, and I won't be able to go over all of them, so please feel free to discuss neglected events in the comments section below. Let's begin. It's hard to ignore the topic of the Atlantic slave trade during the reign of Henry VIII because when he was on the throne, it was just beginning to anchor itself in Africa. Not to spend too much time on it, but conservative estimates claim that around 10 million Africans were shipped to the Americas in the 1530s, and this is simply counting documented records. Despite this unpleasant aspect of African history, they cannot be ignored. But I think this history leads us to another fact that is slightly off topic but noteworthy. During the time Henry VIII was on the throne in the early 16th century, apparently Europeans were just beginning to formulate a sense of superiority over other groups. According to the Encyclopedia of African History and Culture, Europe's sense of superiority has its roots in the 1500s. Europe, at the start of the 16th century, was finally free of the threat of Islam, its main religious, political, and commercial rival. After the expulsion of the Moors in 1492, the Christian kingdoms of Spain and the New Kingdom of Portugal no longer shared the Iberian Peninsula with the kingdoms of Muslim Spain. In the east, the power of the Ottoman Empire was receding after its unsuccessful siege of Vienna in modern-day Austria in 1529. At the same time, European technology began to surpass what other civilizations offered and allowed it to expand and defend its commercial interests far beyond its borders. By that time, the exploration and exploitation of the Americas and the West African coast were well underway. The superiority of European technology, especially its firearms, over traditional societies led to a belief in the superiority of European peoples over all others. This newfound sense of superiority, primarily after the coast was clear of threats, really gives us some insight into the origins of white or European supremacy. This quote seems to suggest that it was around the time of Henry VIII that Europeans in general began to bathe themselves in the idea of superiority. It wasn't something inherent like what popular culture may suggest or what we may internalize via romanticized historical films, but it was an idea that developed over time. This was perhaps one of the more interesting things that began to take place in world history during the time of Henry VIII. Now, back to Africa. During Henry VIII's reign, the greatest Songhai ruler was on the throne. Askia Muhammad Toure was the ruler of the Songhai Empire during its zenith from 1493 to 1528. Songhai was the largest empire West Africa had ever seen. Askia Muhammad strengthened the administrative state and consolidated its power, putting the empire on the map for the larger Islamic world. He was an accomplished conqueror king, expanding the empire while simultaneously promoting economic and religious growth. He revamped the central authority of Songhai and established new positions to help it function properly. He is no doubt one of the principal rulers of the Songhai Empire, and he's certainly remembered as such. He contributed to Timbuktu's reputation as a center of learning. Timbuktu during this time was well staffed with local and foreign scholars. In Eastern Africa during the time of Henry VIII's reign, a group of Africans established what was known as the Funj Sultanate. In the 1500s, black Muslims called Funj conquered a large part of Sudan. At the same time, many African groups including the Dinka, Shilluk, Nuer, and Azande settled in central and southern Sudan. In 1504, a man named Amara Dungas established the first Funj dynasty, and that family ruled in Sudan from the time of Henry VIII to about the 19th century. For the Funj, the 16th century was a turbulent time, as they were engaged in numerous territorial conflicts with Arabs from the surrounding regions around the Blue and White Nile rivers. By the 17th century, Sennar, under Funj leadership, reached its political, economic, and territorial zenith. The Funj Sultanate adopted Islam, and it quickly spread throughout the region. The Sultanate began to control major trade routes that ran between West Africa, Ethiopia, and Egypt. There was a very interesting event that took place in East Africa during the time of Henry VIII. The fate of Ethiopia was in question during the reign of the infamous Ahmad Ibrahim al-Ghazi from 1506 to 1543. Ironically, the dates of his supremacy are almost in exact alignment with the reign of Henry VIII. About 1520, a Muslim religious reformer named Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi came to power in Adal. Known also as Ahmad Gran, he established his brother as puppet king and declared a jihad against Christian Ethiopia. Ahmad Gran created a military force from the swelling population of nomadic Somali and Afar Muslims who responded to both his teachings and the hope of plunder. Al-Ghazi received guns from the Ottoman Empire, and they supported his efforts by sending some troops. He even trained his men in Ottoman tactics. Al-Ghazi began his campaign by refusing to pay tribute to Ethiopia, and he held back the taxes that Ethiopia imposed on Adal. In 1526, Al-Ghazi defeated the Ethiopian army at the Battle of Shimbra Kuri, and his forces overran the Shoa region. By 1535, Al-Ghazi had overrun the Central Highlands, and he began to penetrate deeper into the Christian Northern Highlands. He reportedly burned Christian churches and forcefully converted the population. His reign only ended when the new Ethiopian emperor sought help from the Portuguese. The Portuguese sent 400 riflemen to Ethiopia and trained Galatas's army in European tactics and weaponry. They used hit-and-run tactics and the difficult mountainous terrain of the highlands to their advantage. In 1543, Ethiopian forces defeated Ahmad Gran's army at Wena Dega near Lake Tana. Ahmad Gran lost his life in that battle, and the Adal threat to Ethiopia came to an end. The cost to Ethiopia of the war with Adal was great. Its lands was laid to waste. A substantial portion of its population had to be reconverted from Islam. Hundreds of thousands had been killed, and the treasury was exhausted. Ethiopia in the 1550s retreated into the feudalism that had characterized the Solomonid era at its inception centuries earlier. Well, I'm all out, guys. I'm hoping you learned something about what was going on in Africa during the reign of Henry VIII. And if you like these videos, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.